In this lecture, I'm going to talk to you about the instance level security. In our previous video, we mentioned about the 6 levels of PostgreSQL security. Instance level is the highest level. What does mean is that anything which is on an instance, for example, over here we have installed the PostgreSQL 12 server. So all the databases, so we have 5 databases inside. So instance level security contains anything and everything beneath our server. That includes all the databases. So this is where you do the very high level security privileges to users or group. It controls all databases on an instance, is the highest level of security. So we need to be very cautious, because if you give a user or a group a high level security, they can pretty much access everything within the database. You can assign the following properties or privileges to users or groups. Number 1 is super user. Super user means super access, meaning to say that it can open the database, it can drop the database, it can create tables, schemas, and everything. Create DB contains access privilege to create databases. Create role means you can create roles, meaning say this person has the ability to create roles. Roles are basically privileges that the people can have access to databases, tables, rows, columns, and more. And we're going to talk about this in later videos as well. Login role means can log in into database, and replication can be used for replication of databases across different databases and more. And we're going to talk about this later on in later videos. So by default, super user, create DB, create role, login, replication is there. The other thing that you need to also do is if you add a no to a role, let's say if we don't want a group to have a no super user access, then we use the no super user. That means that this user or a group doesn't have any super access. So let's create 2 roles. One is HR, the other one is programmers. To create a role, the syntax is that you create a role, the role name, and then you define the properties that you want to do. Now, as we go through with other videos, you will see that for each level of securities, the security privileges gets changed at the same time. So for instant level security, super user, create DB, create role, login, replication is the one that you can assign. So we can assign these by separating a space in between them. So I'm saying that we are creating a HR role, which is no super user, no create DB, no create role, and no login. So let's create that. And the other group that we wanted to create was the programmer. So let's run this first. We are creating another role, which is a create role programmers. And over here, we do the same thing, no super user access. We don't want them to create databases. We don't want them to create any role, and we don't want them to log in at the same time. So let's create these 2 roles. So these 2 roles are created, but the thing is that how to see where these roles are there in our system or not. So you go to your instance level, go to the databases, close down, you will see the login and group roles over here. So if I right mouse click on it, go to refresh, and you will see that these roles are created. So we created a HR, we created a programmer's role. So this is where you can see all the different roles that is created. The PG write stats, this is the internal roles that the system created. Now, if you notice one thing, that in the icon of these roles, you will see a icon for a person. That's mean that this is a user. And if you see an icon of a group of people, then that's mean that this is a group role. So over here we have these group roles, and then you have a Postgres, which is the default user created by the system, and then the fresh one that we created just now was the programmers with the group role. So this is another distinguished way to list roles from the PG admin and see whether the roles are either users or groups. Let's take a look at one of the properties of the role as well. So right mouse click on it, go to properties. This is where we'll see that if you notice over here in our create role, we say that we don't want no super user, no create. So I'm going to go to the definition page, and inside we're saying that there is no connection limit and everything, but more importantly, the privileges. We define that group level HR role cannot log in, so it's a no login, that's why it's no. We say no super user, so it's also no super user. No create roles is over here as well, and no create database is defined over here. So whatever we mention over here is replicated in the system as well. Okay, and of course later in the later video we're going to show you how to create role through PG admin as well. It's fairly very simple and more. We've seen the roles from the PG admin and we saw their properties at the same time. Okay, Now let's log into one of the roles. And to log into one of the roles, what we're going to do is we're going to use the PSQL command line. So if you're using Windows or I'm using Mac, so you launch your terminal window. And once you launch your terminal window, you will see this window coming up. So over here, we're going to run some commands. So let's do PSQL minus capital U, and let's log in with the HR. Now it's prompting me for a user HR, but if you remember, we defined the role, but we didn't define any password. So even though whatever our password I say, it will not allow me to log into the database.